Hi world, it's Sunday the 1st of December 2019, it's about midday UK time. December itself is very much a time of build-up in readiness for stuff that's coming up in January, of which I've done a number of videos so far and I will be doing a lot more. And to many of my clients, I'm already saying that by the time you're into the end of January 2020, the hardest time of next year is over. December is going to be a little bit of a crazy month for many different people, especially in my country, the UK, because we've got a crazy general election, which I just think is going to go hideously wrong. More on that another time. We're still in Mercury retrograde shadow. It's clearing. It'll be clear in a week. But what I really want to look at is a taste of what's coming up in January by looking at the past. Now I want to take some of you back, some of you who are nearly as old as me, or old as me, or older than me. Let me take you back. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn in February 1961. And then there was a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius the following, that same year as well. 1961 was notable for a number of different things, most notably the Bay of Pigs disaster in America, the first official involvement of American troops in Vietnam, the first man in space, both from Russia and America. And 1961 heralded the start of a brave new world, both in extraterrestrial affairs and in terms of global conflicts. So let's move forward a bit. In fact, let's move forward quite a lot, 25, 30 years. As we get into the mid-1980s, the technological revolution is gathering pace. And we see the Saturn Uranus conjunction in early Capricorn in 1988. And if I remember correctly, this is stretching my memory now, folks, but if I remember correctly, there was a particular day in February, I think it was 1988. I'm stretching back over 30 years here, when within the space of 48 hours, Saturn, Uranus, Mars and the Moon all moved into Capricorn. The Saturn-Uranus conjunction in Capricorn in 1988 kind of forced an element of structure into the more anarchic ways of Uranus, but it gave us the birth of the internet. The first codes were being written, the first structures and boundaries were being put into place. This was closely followed in 1989 by the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Saturn conjunct Neptune in 1989, that's when the Berlin Wall came down. It was built in 1961. And times were changing. Politics was changing. Capricorn is very much the sign of world government, whether it is world government in terms of political structures and different types of ideology, but it's also government in terms of the way that we as a species are ruled, hence the invention of the internet at the Saturn-Uranus conjunction in 88. Fast forward again just a few more years. Uranus conjunct Neptune in Capricorn. All of these big conjunctions are taking place in Capricorn in the last 60 years. And this happens in 1993. By this time, the internet is an established thing. We're seeing major transformation in political structures and collective groups of nations worldwide. A lot of massive changes happening. Fast forward again. By the time we're into the early 2000s, Pluto is getting ready to move into Capricorn and moves in 2008. And in 2012, 13, 14, we have the Uranus-Pluto square, not a conjunction, but a square, with Uranus at the start of Aries and Pluto at the start of Capricorn. Pluto in Capricorn transforming the ideas of governance, Uranus in Aries kick-starting the ideas of individual human rights and the conflict between the two. And now we're coming up to another Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn, in almost exactly the same place as it was in 1961, just a little bit before. But this time it's Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto in Capricorn. Much more intense, much more serious. There will be a time next year, I think it's around mid-February through to late March, I might be wrong by 2 weeks, but it's around that time, where Mars will join Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. Now, as you know, I do many readings for individuals every year. So much so that I'm beginning to question how much longer I can keep doing this. But with many clients, I'm saying, look at the house of your horoscope that Capricorn is in. This is the only time in your life where you will have Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto together, or roughly together, in one sign, in one house in your horoscope. And when Mars conjoins them over mid-February to late March of next year, that'll be more like a kind of homeopathic laser, some type of surgical point. Bearing in mind that Capricorn has always been known as a sign of governance, of the way we govern our lives individually and collectively, whether it be done by electronic means, by government decree, or by dictatorial imposition. But Capricorn's always, since Greek times and before, been seen as a time of the way we govern our lives at a world level. And for decades, astrologers have been talking about all this stuff in Capricorn as the onset of world government. That's not quite worked out that way, and I hope it never does. But I do suggest that as population, technology and spirituality have accelerated and increased over the last 50, 60 years, exponentially, not linearly, but exponentially, and we're approaching a kind of maximum potential here, that the old ideas of governance are forcibly being changed in a way that's inevitable. And the need for a more collective responsibility, and instead of blaming leaders, the need for individuals to have a greater say in the way the world is run, is becoming more and more of a need. So I do suggest that as we get more and more into the coming years, we're going to see the nature of governance change. And there will be a much more collective way of this happening, whether that be in some type of proportional representation or some type of consensus politics. But it's almost inevitable that this is going to happen, because the alternative is some type of dystopian Judge Dredd governance where the elite 5% rule everything and the rest of people are just like automatons, robots. And obviously we don't want that to happen for our children and our grandchildren, because not only will that kill the human spirit, it will also destroy the planet we live on. It does seem to me at this time, on the 1st of December 2019, looking ahead to next year, that we really are now at the tip of the iceberg. We are at the tipping point. And the next big conjunction after this will be at the very start of the zodiac in 2025, 2026, at 0 degrees of Aries. And by that time, actions and decisions will have been taken which will then dictate the long-term future in a way that's probably not going to be changeable. So from an astrological point of view, I'm fascinated to see what comes up next year. From a personal point of view, I'm so hacked off, disenchanted and disgusted with the actions of 98% of the so-called leaders of this world. And I expect some really massive changes that's going to shock a lot of people in the short term. I don't wish to be too alarmist, but we're heading into one of the craziest times of human history. And as I said earlier, by the end of January, I think the worst 2020, at least for a lot of people, is going to be over. So seatbelts on, folks. December itself isn't going to be too bad. But as we get into the end of the month, we're going to really see things ratcheting up. Okay, now I've got to go and prepare for the astrology of the UK's general election over the coming couple of weeks. Catch you later, world. Bye.